Don't Vote Labour Again. Episode 41. The Grooming Gangs. A Deep Dive. Are the offenders mostly Pakistani? I will say that first and foremost, this scandal is about a failure of the state to protect children. In that respect, it doesn't matter about the ethnicity of the perpetrators. However, the ethnic issue can't be avoided, where it relates to the motivations of the abuser, flawed immigration policies, or the state's slowness to act. Just for the avoidance of doubt, nearly all official inquiries into the scandal acknowledged the offenders of this particular organised abuse were predominantly of a Pakistani background. Sometimes they were Bangladeshis, and had one or two white British helpers. In Rotherham, these were women who befriended the girls. The opening line of Louise Casey's 2015 report into the issue in Rotherham, Report of Inspection of Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council, reads, "Children were sexually exploited by men who came largely from the Pakistani heritage community. In Rotherham, the phenomenon of CSE emerging from the late 1990s onwards concerned a majority of white victims and a majority of Pakistani heritage adult male perpetrators. Our review of case files and strategy meetings held about perpetrators and victims, as well as other information we came across, confirmed that perpetrators were usually described as being Pakistani men. This was a matter of fact." The 2020 Home Office report, Group-Based Child Sexual Exploitation, Characteristics of Offending, lumps the particular issue in with all child sexual exploitation, CSE. It thus avoids drawing the conclusion that grooming gangs are mainly carried out by Pakistani Muslims. It does, however, admit a number of high-profile cases in Rotherham, Rochdale and Telford have mainly involved men of Pakistani ethnicity. Some studies suggest an overrepresentation of black and Asian offenders relative to the demographics of national populations. The report, commissioned by Sajid Javid when the Conservatives were in power, also recommends further research into the ethnicity of offenders. However, the report does, in the opinion of many, manipulate the numbers to try and dismiss the idea it is a factor. Its methodology is definitely shoddy, which I will explain another time. If dismissing the notion was the intention, it worked to some extent, because the report is always trotted out by leftists to debunk the myth there is a particular problem with Pakistani Muslim CSE. Most reports accept that Asian is shorthand for Pakistani and was the flawed terminology of the time among officials, victims and witnesses. As the report into the Oxford Gang, Serious Case Review into CSE in Oxfordshire, states, "The perpetrators in this case were predominantly of Pakistani heritage. In this report, the word Asian is used more than Pakistani. This is not to hide any specific ethnic origin, but because this was the description mainly used by the victims and in agency case records. It is believed that when the term Asian was used, it did very often refer to those of Pakistani heritage, but Asian seems to be the word used in common professional parlance." The report clarifies the victims were white British girls. The Telford Inquiry, the Independent Inquiry into CSE by Tom Crowther, does point out alleged abusers were ethnically mixed, one white, one Chinese, some African, but concedes, "It is an undeniable fact that a high proportion of these cases involved perpetrators that were described by victims or survivors and others as being Asian or often Pakistani. The evidence plainly shows that the majority of CSE suspects in Telford were men of Southern Asian heritage, including all the men convicted in Chalice and Operations Delta and Epsilon." The 2014 inquiry into the Rotherham rape gangs, led by Alexis J., the Independent Inquiry into CSE in Rotherham, states, "In Rotherham, the majority of known perpetrators were of Pakistani heritage, including the 5 men convicted in 2010. The file reading carried out by the inquiry also confirmed that the ethnic origin of many perpetrators was Asian." Jay's 2022 inquiry into the wider issue of CSE does not make any conclusions on ethnicity, but it does admit many of the high-profile CSE prosecutions have involved groups of men from minority ethnic communities. Even the BBC did not hold back from depicting the offenders as ethnic Pakistani in its 2017 drama Three Girls, based closely on the Rochdale case. There were no invented white characters taking part, and the offenders were even shown crying racism when accused. This seems to have been made before the peak woke period, when the truth and realism became unfashionable. These are from my article series Don't Vote Labour Again, published on my Substack, link in description. I usually split each subject into smaller episodes. In the description, you will find links to the other episodes. You can also check out my playlist to find every single one. Please support me in my work by subscribing to this channel, subscribing free to my Substack, and by liking and sharing. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon as we plumb the depths of this dreadful government.